Hi, my name is Bente, I'm the Norse Witch, and welcome to part 2 of my little mini-series on land and local spirits. If you have not watched the part 1 yet, then this will be linked in the video description as well as here. In part 1, I went into the theoretical aspects of the topic of land and local spirits. So, what is my personal definition of what land and local spirits are? What were they seen as in pre-Christian Scandinavia as well as more recent Scandinavian folklore and the trolldom tradition? So that is what I talked about in part 1, and I promised you a part 2 where I go more into the practical aspects. So how do I form a relationship with these kinds of spirits? What can I work with them for? And how is that done in pre-Christian Scandinavia and in trolldom? What do we know from there? So that is what we are going to be talking about today, more of the practical aspects. And I actually thought about making a part 3, which would be a themed Q&A. I thought that would kind of make sense in case I am missing any of your questions. Then in that video I could go into your specific questions, any specific problems you might have, or anything that I missed in those 2 videos. With that being said, let us jump right into it. Let's talk about land and local spirits and how we can work with them. Okay, first off, building a relationship. In my personal experience and also in my personal opinion, a lot of this video as well as the last video is my own experience and my own opinion. So just prefacing that. And in my experience and in my opinion, it makes sense to form a relationship with the land and local spirits. Not only so that we can ask them for favors, so that we can, for example, ask them for help with spell work or with anything like that, but also in general because they are the spirits that we are usually most connected to because we are living on their land. So for example, we are living in a city or a village that a local spirit has like the guardianship of, or we are living next to a cemetery where a cemetery spirit lives, or we are living maybe in a forest where a land spirit kind of has reign over the forest. Let's just call it that. So we are living in direct community with those spirits. So having a relationship with them not only makes sense to kind of get something out of it, but in general, it's kind of like having a relationship with your neighbors. It's a community question. That being said, I am personally not a fan of thinking about, okay, I want to do something, I need the help of a graveyard spirit, so let's just go to a graveyard that I've never been to. I have never met the spirit of that graveyard. Let's just go there and ask them what should go wrong. I'm not necessarily a fan of that. I am a fan of building a relationship first, knowing the spirits that are inhabiting the area around you, and then later on, when you have already established a relationship with them, then you can ask them for favors. But it doesn't work the other way around. It's the same thing with your neighbors. You don't go to your next door neighbor and ask them to watch your cats when you're gone on holiday if you've never even met them before. So I don't really differentiate there between humans and spirits. It's exactly the same principle. You probably want to establish some kind of relationship, some kind of friendship with a neighbor first before you ask them for a favor. And it's exactly the same thing with spirits. That being said, how can we do that? How can we form a relationship with land and local spirits? So as I already said in the last video, in part 1 in this mini-series, land and local spirits are very tied to the physical realm because they are literally tied to a place. So they are of course very concerned with that place in question. So if you want to form a relationship with a forest spirit or with a graveyard spirit, well, you have to go there. You can't sit in your comfy living room and connect with a forest spirit. Maybe it would work if that house is in the forest, but if it isn't, you definitely have to go out and into the area that they are inhabiting and that they're watching over. And you also have to show some concern with the land that they are inhabiting. So these spirits are very concerned of like keeping the place that they're inhabiting nice and healthy and living and clean. And you should show the same concern. A local spirit that's very much concerned with the area that they're inhabiting, guarding over that area, protecting that area, that spirit will not necessarily like you if you go there and litter, for example. That is the most foundational thing that you should do if you want to form a relationship with a local or a land spirit. The way I usually start out a relationship with a land or a local spirit is, first of all, I go to the place where that spirit lives. Hello, Scotty. And then I will quickly just introduce myself, just simply say, okay, I'm here, hi, my name is Bente, I'm here to, I don't know, appreciate the beauty of this forest or to just take a walk on the cemetery. I'm not here to cause any harm, I'm here to maybe form a relationship with the spirits here, but like, you know, just simply saying, okay, this is my name, this is why I'm here, and I don't want to cause any harm, I'm here to do good. Very, very basic. Probably if you're going to your next door neighbor, you're also not just going into their flat and then sitting on their couch. You're probably introducing yourself and telling them why you're there, right? Same thing with land and local spirits. It's actually that easy. And if you want to be extra cool about it, then you bring them a gift. Same way with your neighbors. If you're meeting your neighbors for the first time, usually you will bring a small gift, maybe a piece of cake or something, so that your relationship starts off on like a good footing. And it's the same thing with spirits. They also like to get little gifts. So you're going there, you're introducing yourself, you're giving a little bit of an offering. This offering will look different depending on what kind of spirit it is. I have a separate video on offerings. I have multiple videos on the topic of offerings, so I will link those in the video description and one of them up here. Offerings will look different depending on the spirit in question. I know, for example, with a lot of graveyard spirits, people like to pay their entrance fee and like put a little coin somewhere near the entrance, for example. With land spirits, a lot of the times it's some kind of food or something. Incense really works for any spirit, but make sure that your offering will not disturb the environment and any animals or plants growing there. You can do a lot of harm if you're giving regular offerings and they are offerings that are harming the environment, so definitely make sure that you're researching what kind of animals are living around the area and what kind of plants are growing there, so that you know, for example, all right, if I want to give maybe some food as an offering, what kind of food can I give that will not be harmful to the animals living there, because they will most likely be eating it. So if you're giving bread, for example, as an offering, maybe not the best idea, because that is usually harmful to, for example, a lot of birds. And same goes with food that includes any kinds of seeds that could actually sprout and start growing there. If you're giving an apple that contains seeds and they could sprout and grow there, make sure that they don't contain seeds, because you don't want to introduce any plants to an area that would not usually grow there. Just make sure you research beforehand and bring an offering that cannot harm any part of the environment, basically. But yeah, this is not a video on offerings, so I won't go deeper into that. I just wanted to make sure that you are aware that your offerings can do harm to the environment. And if you want to form a relationship with land and local spirits, you should not harm the environment. The land and local spirits are very concerned with the health of the land that they're living on. And if you're accidentally harming the environment with your offerings, then your offerings will probably not make the best impression. So you have gone to the place, you have introduced yourself, you have given a small offering, and then you can simply spend time there. Do things like simply taking a walk and observing maybe the animals that you see in the place, observe the plants that are growing in the place. Simply spend time there and show the spirit that you are willing to communicate, that you're willing to form a relationship, that you're actually also concerned and, I don't know, interested in the place that they are inhabiting and guarding. And while you are there, of course, you can do even more to show the spirit that you are also concerned with the place in question. For example, you could do something as simple as picking up other people's trash. There is trash everywhere we go, so simply bringing a little trash bag and some gloves so you can pick up other people's trash. That will make a very good impression on land and local spirits, but also things like, if you are able and legally allowed to do so, maybe cleaning the headstones on graveyards, for example. That would be a nice offering. There's a lot of just devotional acts that you can do for land and local spirits to show that you are doing something good for the place that they are inhabiting. And that will make a very, very good impression. And then after some time, you will probably realize that the spirit is kind of becoming more friendly towards you. The thing is that with a lot of land and local spirits, they haven't been acknowledged for a long time. Some of them haven't been acknowledged for literally years. So some of them may feel like they are either kind of a little bit asleep because like nobody really cared for them, so they didn't really bother with humans anymore. Apart from if they, of course, kind of hurt their place in any kind of way. And that way some of them can become a little bit hostile even towards humans, because of course, if you are the spirit of, let's say, a forest, and people are going there all the time and they are littering, they are putting their trash there, maybe they're causing forest fires. A lot of humans nowadays are just not very concerned with their environment. They are littering, they are trashing the place, they are doing a lot of things that a land or local spirit would dislike. So of course a lot of land and local spirits are a little bit hostile towards humans, or they have grown a little bit hostile towards humans simply because they have learned that humans are trashing their place. And that's not very, very nice. If I am living in my apartment and people are constantly coming here and trashing my place, then I wouldn't necessarily be friendly towards strangers, you know? So this stage of simply showing up in their place and giving offerings and showing that you are actually friendly and that you want to actually form a friendly relationship with them. This stage can take some time until they warm up, because they have learned that a lot of humans don't care about them and don't care about nature and don't care about the place that they're inhabiting. And depending on the place, of course, this will be more or less likely. Land spirits that are living in places that are not usually crowded, those spirits will probably be less hostile towards humans simply because they haven't really received a lot of hate from humans, or humans haven't really gone there a lot and littered, for example. But spirits in the cities where there are a lot of humans that are, I don't know, getting drunk and pissing all over the place, throwing their trash everywhere, those spirits might be more hostile simply because they're used to more humans wreaking havoc in their place. Just make sure that you are patient with those spirits and show that you understand their viewpoint, because honestly, if that was your apartment or your house, you would feel the same way. So yeah, I would say remain in this kind of stage of the relationship until you kind of feel like this spirit is becoming more friendly towards you, is maybe becoming more present in general. Because as I said, some may feel like they're a little bit asleep. You may have to like call on them and give offerings a lot before they become more active again and before they become interested in even communicating with you and interacting with you. Just make sure you're patient and wait until you feel like that spirit is ready to take the next step. But yeah, once you feel like they are open towards that, then you can start communicating with them more heavily. And honestly, I don't really have to get into how to communicate with them a lot in this video, because I already made a video on spirit communication. It will be linked down below and up here. If you haven't seen it, then go watch it, because honestly, communicating with spirits is basically the same no matter what kind of spirit it is. So it doesn't really matter really if you're working with your psychic senses because you're more of a medium, or if you're working with tarot or runes or any kind of other divination system, if you're working with physical signs, it doesn't really matter. But one thing I really want to get more deeply into is Útiseta, because that is specifically a way to communicate with spirits, especially land and local spirits, sometimes also ancestors or spirits of the dead, that we know from pre-Christian Scandinavia, and we know it existed, so that's nice. We usually don't know a lot, but we know that that existed. So I want to go more deeply into that. But if you're interested in other ways of communicating with spirits, then, as I said, Video is linked. Alright, so Útiseta. I can't talk about land and local spirits without talking about Útiseta if I am someone who is interested in pre-Christian Scandinavian magical practices, because it is one of the few that we actually know existed, so that's nice. We don't know a lot, but we know about that. And we know for sure that it was practiced because it is mentioned in multiple literary sources. Probably the one that is most interesting to people, or at least most well known, will be the Íslendingabók, where basically it is explained how people figured out if Iceland should convert to Christianity, which was done by Útiseta. That is of course one of the more interesting sources, but also the Grágás. I don't know if it was pronounced that or Grágás. I'm not quite sure, but I will put the name there. That's a medieval Icelandic law code from the 12th century, which basically condemned Útiseta as an old pagan practice and forbade it. It's always nice when we have early medieval law codes that are talking about old pagan practices, forbidding them because they want to condemn it, and now we're here being like, oh yeah, nice, thank you that you were mentioning it, because now we can take it up again and practice it again, so that's nice. Útiseta can be pretty simple and it can be more complex. The thing is, we know it exists and we know like the framework, basically how it works, but we don't necessarily know what went on in the minds of the people practicing it. So there is no real how-to on how to practice it. We just know what happened, observed from the outside. So it can be as simple as going out on maybe a hill or a burial mound or any kind of place where a land or a local spirit is living, or a spirit of the dead. With burial mounds, of course, a lot of the times these are spirits of the dead that we are communicating with. But this can also be done with land or local spirits. You are going into their place, you are introducing yourself, giving a little bit of an offering, and then you are sitting down and you are contemplating. I would personally say it is a form of meditation, but as I already said, we don't know what happened in the minds of the people who were doing it. We only know they sat there in contemplation, they shut up, they sat there for a long time, and then at some point they stood up again and were like, I know the answer. It is mentioned as an old pagan practice to call forth spirits, so we know that communicating with spirits was a part of this practice. It's not just like they sat down somewhere in nature to contemplate, but they went out to communicate with spirits. So spirit communication was a part of it. But we don't necessarily know how exactly people were doing it, so it's possible that they simply went into a meditative state. It's possible that they went into more of a deeper trance state and did some journeying. We don't necessarily know that because no source mentions it. But what we know for a fact is they sat there for a prolonged period of time and they communicated with spirits. And that is why I would say you can do it more simple or you can do it more elaborate. From simply sitting there, waiting until spirits are approaching, communicating with them in any way that you like, and then leaving again. Or you can do it a little bit more elaborate, as in you go to the place in the evening before the sun goes down. Then you are introducing yourself, giving an offering, and then sitting there with a cloak over your head, because that is mentioned in the Íslendingabók. The person is sitting there with a cloak over their head, probably to kind of keep out stimuli from the outside. A woolen cloak would muffle the noises and things like that. So there is a lot of reason why they could have done it. Maybe also simply to keep warm, because at night, of course, it gets cold. It is mentioned that there is a woolen cloak involved that is put over the head. You can do that if you want to, and then you can do it literally from sundown to sunrise. A lot of the times it is done at night from sundown to sunrise. I wouldn't necessarily say you have to do it exactly that way, because not every single source says it's specifically from sundown to sunrise, but it is something that has been also kept up in trolldom. Sitting there communicating or doing something from sundown to sunrise at night. And of course at night it's always, ooh, it's spooky, there are more spirits out and about and active. So it's something that people are doing, but you can for sure do it during the day too if you want to. But yeah, the gist of it, the juicy part is you go into a place where you know there is a spirit that I want to communicate with. You are sitting there, you are waiting basically until the spirits are approaching and are open to communicate with you, and then you communicate. The thing is that I cannot tell you how people were doing that specific part, again, because nobody wrote down the exact process. You can do it however works for you, but yay for actually knowing about a practice that was actually done in pre-Christian Scandinavia. That's nice. So for me, that's definitely one of the main ways how I communicate or form a relationship with spirits, is literally going there, sitting down and shutting the fuck up and listening. I think the listening part is a very, very important part. For once, we shouldn't be blabbering, we shouldn't be yapping, we should shut the fuck up and listen to the spirits. But now I also promised you to not only talk about how we can form a relationship with land and local spirits, but also what you can do with them or what you can work with them for. So let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, local spirits. It depends on the location, of course. Depending on the location, they will be able to do different things or help you with different things. If you have a local spirit of like a bank or something, you can do work with them for financial stuff. I don't know, the local spirit of your school or something can probably help you learn or get good grades or something like that. So definitely do that. Just think about, okay, what is that location? What makes sense when I think about that location? With a school, for example, of course, learning, grades, gaining wisdom, gaining knowledge, anything around that. And you can do that with any specific place. So local spirits, it's a very, very wide area of things that you can do with them, depending on the location that they are inhabiting and watching over. With land spirits, of course, the most obvious thing that you will work with them for is fertility. That was also one of the main things that people worked for with land spirits in pre-Christian Scandinavia, for example. Because, of course, they are watching over the land that you're living on. So if you are a gardener, or if you are a farmer, or if you are a fisherman, then of course one of the main things that you will probably do with them is ensuring that the land is fertile, that you are working on or living on, so that you will be able to, well, either make a lot of money nowadays, or if you're just gardening for yourself, then to feed yourself and your family. So that's of course like a given. But also land and local spirits, they are kind of reigning over the area that they are inhabiting. So of course, one thing that you can work with them for is protection in that specific area. So it's not like you can ask them for general protection for you, because once you move out of their space, then that's not something that they can give you anymore. But for example, if you are working with the local spirit of your city, or if you're working with land spirits that are reigning over the area around your house, then of course you can ask them for help in protecting your property and your house. That is definitely something that you can do with both local and land spirits. One thing that will also be very interesting to a lot of people working with plants a lot in their magical practice, not necessarily as a gardener, would be to, for example, ask the land or local spirits to imbue the herbs that you're foraging with a specific purpose. So, for example, if you want to forage some plants for a financial spell, for a money spell, not only foraging herbs that have something to do with financial prosperity, but also foraging them near a bank and asking the local spirits of that bank to imbue those plants with even more power for financial prosperity. That way you can use those and they will have like even more of a boost for specifically this kind of spell. That is something that I love to do, and you can also do it more generally if you are, for example, foraging in a forest and you have a good relationship with the spirit of that forest. Then you can simply ask that spirit to imbue any plant you are foraging there with magical power, with a little bit of juju, with juice, with energy, however you want to call it. That's something you can do, and that is very, very simple, but very, very convenient, very, very handy. And now I already said with local spirits, it totally depends on the kind of location that they're inhabiting. But there are also some more generally accepted ideas on what you can do with specific local spirits. So if we're, for example, looking at Trolldom, then let me just give you like 3 examples for spirits, like local spirits that are very often worked with. One of them, crossroads spirits. Another one, graveyard spirits. And then, for example, also water spirits like Nyx, or other kinds of spirits that are inhabiting rivers or lakes or even seas. While of course it always depends on the location, like the specific location, there is like a generally accepted idea of general things that you can do with those kinds of spirits. So for example, with crossroads spirits, generally accepted ideas for that would be doing road openings, removing afflictions like curses, hexes, the evil eye, things like that, working for divination and omens, like anything like that. Those are, for example, some general ideas that are widely accepted to apply to any kind of crossroads spirit. For graveyards, for example, a lot of graveyard spirits are worked with for hexing and cursing, but also for protection from hexes and curses and any kinds of afflictions that could be put on you from the other world, so from spirits. But also for removing sad afflictions, removing hexes and curses, removing the evil eye, anything like that. Those kind of are agreed on for any kind of graveyard spirit. And honestly, watery spirits like the Nyx, for example, are very interesting to me because they are usually seen as more hostile towards people. They're knowing to lure people into the water by singing or playing instruments and then drowning them. But if you have a good relationship with them, then they are known to, for example, be able to teach you a lot of skills. They are known to give you knowledge and wisdom. Of course, they are able to teach you musical instruments and singing and anything like that. But they're also known to be able to help you with your magical powers, so they're able to teach you magic. So they are hostile, but if you have a good relationship with them, then you can also work with those kinds of spirits. And those are just some generally accepted ideas, and those exist in any kind of tradition, in any kind of folklore. And one more thing from pre-Christian Scandinavia that I just want to mention that is pretty interesting is the idea of cursing with land and local spirits. There are actually sources that are talking about nødstøng. If you are interested in any kind of pre-Christian Scandinavian form of magic, then you have probably heard of them. And those are, well, they're basically poles that you are putting an animal head onto, and those are used for cursing and hexing. And those, for example, are also used, or were also used in a context where they were used to basically curse or hex the land spirits and basically say, okay, I'm cursing these land spirits here to not be able to settle until they have kind of forced someone else out of the country. So if you're smart about it, you can also work with land and local spirits to hex or curse people or to drive people away. Those spirits are reigning over a specific area. So if you are, for example, looking at the local spirit of your workplace, for example, you could work with them to banish a coworker that you hate. They are reigning over that area. And if you don't want someone in that specific area, then why not work with the local spirit or the land spirit that reigns over that area? That makes so much sense. But lastly, I want to close off this chapter with one thing. While there are general ideas on, for example, things you can work for with graveyard spirits or crossroads spirits, or this kind of local spirit or that kind of local spirit, I would always advise you to communicate with them, get to know them, and ask them what you can work with them for. Because every spirit is different, and while these general ideas exist, you might figure out that there is something completely unrelated that they will be able to help you with. While it's cool that we know, okay, you can hex or curse with the spirit of a graveyard, it's even cooler to actually know the spirit and to figure out together with that spirit what they can help you with and what you can do for them. I would always say don't just rely on what the sources say, but make your own experiences, form your own relationships with the spirit, and then figure out what you can do together. Alright, that being said, that is everything that I wanted to cover in this video. I hope that everything that you were expecting or hoping for was included in this video. If not, then I will most probably make a part 3 that is a themed Q&A in which you will be able to ask any questions that you might still have. Make sure to subscribe and give it a thumbs up and ring the bell down below so that you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Feel free to check out my other socials, and if you want to support this channel, then make sure to check out my Patreon or my YouTube membership. And I will see you in another video. Bye!